I thought I would do something different today and do a video review of my custom Armada Starscream that I made several years ago. So this is how he scales with other figures. And this is what the stock figure looks like. So for this custom, I completely reworked his proportions so he'd look a little more elegant, I guess. So I gave him these swords from Windblade, and I just cleared off all the silver paint. I think they fit him really well. I also gave him some null rays, which are on ball joints. And a big part of what I did for this figure was cut a lot of new articulation on him. So this shoulder joint is completely new. This is on a ball joint. And then his wings are also on ball joints now. And then his neck is also on a ball joint, so he can look in different directions. In the original figure, he didn't even have a neck joint. And then he's got ball joint hips, so he can get an outward kick, then forward and backwards, and everything in between. This thigh swivel was part of the original figure, and the original figure did allow for a forward and backward kick. And then he also has a little bit of waist articulation, but the cockpit gets in the way of that. And then he also has ankle pivots for his feet as well. So some of the proportion changes I did was I made his arms a lot shorter so they would fit his body better. And then I made his toes longer so he would just look better overall. And then these cannons on his back are also on ball joints so they can articulate. Transformation is pretty similar to the original figure. You just flip up the cockpit. You push down on the head to push it back into the chest. And then you separate the front of the body from the back. And then this piece used to just stick out on the original figure, so I gave that a piece of articulation to get out of the way. And then you rotate the legs back. And then these wings are going to slightly peg into place onto the shoulder bits to clean up. And then the legs basically just close in here, and then the toe is going to fold down there. And it's going to be a bit like this, and then you finish rotating the hips around. And then once it's in position, the leg will clean up this gap back here. Okay, so this is what he looks like so far. And then his arm is just going to rotate back. And then his null ray, you rotate back forward so that it's facing the right direction. And then you just line up all these ball joints to clean up this area. So here's how he looks in jet mode, and I cleaned up his jet quite a bit too. I took off the fins on the side of the fuselage, and then these null rays are looking pretty good, pointing to the front. And then I made it so that the legs come up a little bit more to fill out the back of the jet and give him these tail fins. So I'm pretty proud of this jet mode. He looks a lot sleeker now. And then he doesn't have a lot of garbage in the undercarriage. There is some kibble down there, but it's a lot cleaner than the original figure. So he's very streamlined. One weakness of this custom, though, is that it's a little bit heavy because I was using a 2-part epoxy back then instead of polymorph plastics. And then most of the pieces don't really peg in place, so there is some fiddliness, especially because everything's ball joints. So that's something I might work on a little bit later. But for the most part, this custom's pretty complete. And this is how he scales with the deluxe figure. I think this is a pretty good scale. I don't really have a figure stand that will hold this figure, but this is what he looks like when he's posed up. He's pretty dynamic now. And because he was one of my earlier figures, he's got some ugliness here and there, like the insides here where there's epoxy. And then back here, it's definitely not that great to look at. So this is the kind of stuff I used for customizing a while ago. This is a really good material. It sets really hard once it's hardened, but it's pretty messy, and it does take several hours before it cures. Now I typically use these polyplastics, which you can just microwave and then put in place to set all your parts together, and then it hardens in about 5 minutes. What's nice about this is you can sculpt it while it's hardening. This one, it hardens like too fast to really do anything with. You just got to put your pieces in place really quickly. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that figure. And yeah, leave me a comment and I'll post some more if you're interested.